Farzad, many Tesla investors are expecting a tsunami of Tesla robotaxis to be deployed over the course of the next few years. But what does that mean for companies like Uber? Uber's CEO has just made the case that robotaxi operators like Tesla will in fact need them.
I'm so shocked to hear that, David.
Check this out.
I want to ask you about the business model impact of robo-taxis or self-driving. In the old world, Uber's network effect was a marketplace effect where you connected drivers and riders, and if you had the most geographic density in an area, then you could promise riders faster pickups and the drivers got higher utilization, and that was a very powerful network effect. But we're moving into a new world where anyone who has a fleet of self-driving cars, in theory, could just make them available to the public and start competing. How do you see that impacting your mode? Do you have to go from being an asset-light business to now owning all these cars and deploying them? And is that a good thing or a bad thing for your business?
So
How do you think about this?
I think that the same economics apply, right? Which is, if we have that fleet owner is not going to have as many vehicles available in a certain market than, let's say, a network like ours. And we will have a hybrid network. We're going to have humans and autonomous cars together, and that's going to continue for a while. The autonomous the machines aren't going to replace all humans, at least for the foreseeable future.
This is the frustrating part of, okay, number one, this is my Persian brother, okay? He's Persian, I'm Persian, I love the man. And I want to make that very clear. But on this channel, I've been very critical on Uber. And this is one of the very specific reasons why. It's that the assumption here is and he said it as a very just kind of like a passive comment. Well, like if you're going to have this fleet of autonomous vehicles, you're just not going to have enough. You're just not going to have enough, right? So you have to come to Uber. Okay. This is the fundamental point about Tesla Robotaxi, is that it's not a Waymo, it's not a Zeekr, it's not any other company, okay? Tesla has the ability to manufacture, and we see this in Australia now, we see it in multiple countries, 2 million self-driving cars per year. Uber's entire active fleet in the United States, they cover every city, every county, every state virtually, is 1 million active. So Tesla can manufacture Uber's entire fleet of active drivers in the United States in 6 months. This is the point that I do not understand from my perspective. And this is why I've always said Uber is in huge trouble, because if you have a company in Tesla that can manufacture that many units per year, why would they just give that to Uber? What is the incentive for Tesla to be like, have it? Here you go. This is yours. Okay? And we see it that Tesla has the app now. They have the Robotaxi app, and they're developing it. And their pricing on that app is significantly cheaper than Uber's, especially in places like Austin. Why is that? Because they don't have a driver. What happens to Uber? Let's say in this magic scenario. Okay, let's say in this magic scenario, Tesla's like, here you go. You can have these. You can start having these cars on your network. You can start putting them on your network little by little. Uber has a platform that has, let's say, those 1 million drivers, and those 1 million drivers are activated by Uber raising the price of the fare to a high enough level for people to want to drive for Uber, right? You're going to get a lot more drivers if you're charging $3 per mile than you're charging $1.50 per mile. But what happens when this self-driving network starts coming in, okay, in the millions of units per year, that can run at a significantly lower price than the drivers? The drivers are going to stop driving. And so what does that do? It automatically shrinks your network into basically nothing, because you're not going to have a forcing function for drivers to want to join the network to give rides. And then when you're a company that can make that many cars per year, you have zero incentive to give it to somebody else for them to just add additional pricing on there to just run the app, when Tesla can do the same exact thing. It makes absolutely no sense. And that passive comment drives me nuts, because that is that destroys the business model for Uber. It destroys it. Now, what's interesting, actually, you know what? I want to shut up. Keep going.
Okay, we'll keep going. I think scale and pricing are the trump cards. Dara's going to get to utilization, and he's going to get to demand, basically. So let's see if he can defend himself.
Let's see.
So for us, if you're part of our network, you are going to get more requests than the player who's doing a standalone, because we already have the demand. The request is going to come from much closer. So instead of, pickup who's 15 minutes away for a 10-minute ride, you're going to get a pickup that's 3 minutes away for a 10-minute ride.
That is a function of how many drivers you have on the network. When you can manufacture Uber's fleet twice per year, over time, your wait times are going to be significantly less than Uber's, because you can just manufacture drivers, either Robotaxi that charges a fraction of what the driver would charge, because they have to pay for gas, they have to pay for maintenance, they have to pay for their time, et cetera, et cetera. So again, like you see like the gamesmanship here a little bit. Like it's operating from a standpoint where it's like it's a Waymo world or it's a Zeekr world. It's completely ignoring the fact that you have a company that can make 2 million self-driving cars per year. That is not, because if he recognizes that, the whole value proposition of Uber crumbles.
So I think what Dara's going to get to in a moment is if he can increase demand because of the network he's already got on Uber, then the utilization of each individual asset will be higher. So
Bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
You know why? How do you increase demand in this point? How do you increase demand if you're Uber?
Price.
Okay. So what happens to the drivers that don't want to drive anymore when you're charging $1.50 per mile? What happens to the network?
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So the utilization in terms of the revenue generating miles as a percentage of total miles driven is much, much higher on our network. So the player that, if you have fleet player A who's going direct, standalone, fleet player B who's working with us, fleet player B will have much more business, will have many more miles that are creating revenue as a percentage of the total miles driven. And as a result, each of their cars are going to get much more revenue per car per day if you think about Uber Eats.
That's true, because these car manufacturers, quote unquote, like Waymo and Zeekr, et cetera, they can only make 1,000, 2,000 cars per year. Okay, so when you can only make 1,000 to 2,000 cars per year, obviously you want to plug into the network that already has the drivers. But when you're manufacturing millions of cars per year, you can, again, you create your own network by default because you are the supplier of labor. You supply the labor. Why would you give that labor to just an app to run the labor? Run it yourself. You already have it. And you can run it at a much lower cost. You displace Uber, you're done. GG's.
Right, there's this drama which is, hey, do you go direct only or do you work with a marketplace? And the fact is, every major food player, McDonald's, has a direct channel. But they have a box, and they want that box to create as much revenue as possible. So they have a direct channel, and they work through our marketplace, DoorDash marketplace, other marketplaces as well, because that's how you drive utilization. And so I think that most of these players, there are going to be some players like a Waymo, like a Tesla, who can build their direct channel. But we think if they want to drive maximum economics out of these really expensive cars for now, they're going to also want to work with us.
Really expensive cars for now. You see that? Like, it's a lie. The manufacturing cost for a Model Y is like $35,000 max, probably less. And the Cybercab is going to be sub 25. It's a lie. I hate the position he's in, honestly. And again, I could be 100% wrong. Like, let's be very clear for the people that are watching this. Everybody knows how I feel about how Uber is going to be positioned in a world where you have a company that can manufacture millions of robotaxis per year. I don't see the forcing function for Tesla to give Uber any slice of the business. What's funny here is that Tesla is partnering with Uber on the freight side of the business. Right? I don't know if you saw that coming out from the last couple days, is that the Tesla Semi team is partnering with Uber to run the freight. Okay? So so that is a very interesting piece. But Tesla is limited from a manufacturing perspective on the freight, and they have to put it to work because they're not going to get to millions of units per year on the Semi for a long time. It's going to take them time, and they need to make sure they have the utilization for those semis, because if you're thinking about trucking, that part of the business is in a completely different place than automobiles are, because trucking requires a lot of times long distance. A lot of times when you have that huge trailer, utilization does make sense, okay? But when you're talking about just one person going from point A to point B, it's a completely different ballgame. So Dara is in a very, very interesting spot, because he needs to figure out how to get Uber, the company, to transition from his perspective to a place where they employ people, to a place where they convince manufacturers of these robotaxis to use them as a distributor of those services. And so the question becomes, what is the forcing function for them to actually get that business? And at some point, when you have a big enough scale, that forcing function diminishes, because when you own the labor and you are manufacturing the labor at will, what is your, like, Tesla might just be better off, Calacanis is talking about this all the time. Okay, just buy Uber, roll them in, and then that becomes your thing. Fine. That could be a value proposition in the long term. But if you run this through enough time, Uber's value proposition makes zero sense. Zero.
So what do you make of this McDonald's analogy? I sold my Uber stock maybe 5 years ago now, right? So I'm bearish on the company, but I think the McDonald's analogy is an interesting angle, because McDonald's has massive demand on its own and is then increasing its utilization by dialing into Uber as well.
Okay.
Is there any value in that, do you think, for Tesla?
Okay, but why? Why is Uber able to offer that? What is the labor they have to offer that? Humans. They are leveraging their existing network of humans to deliver the food from one point to another. The discussion here is about when you have a company that can reach a critical mass of manufacturing in enough of the quote unquote, not quote unquote, even literal human replacement when it comes to the labor, what value proposition does Uber have?
Yeah, because also Uber and McDonald's, whether McDonald's does it in-house or Uber does it, that's going to cost them about the same. They need a dude or a lady on a bike in a car to transport that. But that's not going to be the same, because Tesla doesn't need a human whatsoever on the network. They just need the order. Yeah. So to finish that point, Tesla will be way cheaper doing it itself.
Exactly.
It will be more expensive using Uber.
Uber's fundamental value proposition is pairing a human that has capacity to do labor with a human that needs the labor. And the domain they work in is transportation and delivery. That's their domain. When you remove the human from the equation, and then you have a company that is able to manufacture the equivalent human labor multiple times per year, what is Uber's value proposition? That's it. That's been my question this whole time. What, an app? Okay, great.
Do you think you will need to buy and deploy your own fleets, or can you rely purely on third-party fleet owners?
So I think that ultimately, if you look at the end state, I think all of these cars are going to be financeable. So if you look, again, in the hotel business, I used to be in the travel business, a Hilton or a Marriott, who's the brand, doesn't own any of their hotels. Those hotels are owned by financial-only players. I think 10 years down the line, there are these things called REITs, real estate investment trusts. You're going to have fleets. You're going to have financial owners that own big fleets of cars that are on our network, maybe on other networks.
The new Hertz, the new enterprise kind of a thing.
I'd say it's going to be more financial players. So it's not Hertz and Enterprise.
Okay.
These are going to be like
pure
the Blackstones of the world, and they own fleets, and they're just trying to monetize those fleets as much as possible. That's the end state. Between now and the end state, we will take balance sheet risk, because we know exactly how much revenue a car can produce in said market, because cars are already producing revenue. So we can sign up for the revenue. We will prove out the business model. We'll use our balance sheet to prove out the business model. And then at some point, the whole thing's going to get financialized, and we'll be able to take it off balance sheet.
So what's become very obvious to me with this Uber discussion, okay, and this is perhaps why, again, I could be barking up the wrong tree. That's definitely one of the possibilities. But the thing that I can't get my head wrapped around is that I don't think people understand the scale at which Tesla is going to be able to manufacture self-driving vehicles. That I think that is that equation that people haven't wrapped their head around in yet when they make these statements. Again, it goes back to being able to manufacture the equivalent labor that a human would do driving the car multiple times per year forever. And so when you're able to do that, Why would you just, okay, and if you are Uber, think about that for a second. If Tesla's going to be the player that's going to be able to essentially, let's say, be 98% of Uber's entire fleet, Uber has a single customer risk like no other company in the history of the world. And at that point, what is the difference between Uber and Tesla? There isn't. And that's my point. That's my point.
And maybe that's why Dara just sold a load of Uber stock.
I don't know. I mean, listen, the dude deserves to again, this is nothing personal. Like, I want to be very clear. I think Dara is a very smart, he's a great CEO. He has to do what he has to do. He has to do what he has to do. And I really respect him for that. And he's he's a brilliant mind for taking this on. Again, I am stuck on the inevitability of a company being able to manufacture the equivalent of the human fleet multiple times per year. And this is the trend for embodied AI, like not just cars, but literally anything. This is the disruption. And then if you play this long term and companies like Tesla, you're going to have a sort of result where you're going to have maybe one or a handful of companies that are going to manufacture the majority of the labor for humans. What is the incentive for those companies to just give it to an app to, run it for them? They'll own the ecosystem. The Robotaxi will be the ecosystem for people to go on, like, just think about this for a second. Like when a Robotaxi gets approved in Austin, in Texas, or like wide open, we have 20,000 Robotaxis driving everywhere, maybe more in the Austin metro area. What's stopping Tesla, the Robotaxi app, with partnering with businesses, right? And let's say bars, like Friday night, and you're a bar that, you hope more people would come in the door. You partner with Robotaxi, Tesla, and be like, hey, I would love to run a special with you guys. All right. I will pay whatever, $100, $200 for this promotion. And then you can offer on my behalf 50 free rides to my bar, to and fro, from anywhere within 30 miles of my bar. And then all those people that take that, they'll be given a QR code, and then they'll get their first drink on the house or whatever, or 20% off their drinks. And then you do that with every single business use case. And then you create an incentive for people to go on your network and go to your place for free. The reason why you can do that is because the cost per mile of the electric vehicle is going to be sub 40 cents per mile, probably even like significantly less with Cybercab. So when it costs $5 to get to the bar, and that's a customer you never had that would have ended up spending probably 40 to $50 that night, all of a sudden you're paying $10 to get them to and fro from, like, say 20 miles away or whatever, and you end up making $40 that you would have never made before. Why would Tesla ever give that up? That makes no sense to me. Why would they ever give that up? And then once the bot gets working, stick a bot in there, start doing deliveries, and then create the same incentive. Hey, order this. Say you're a business that has surplus stock of something, right? Just put it on the Robotaxi network. Hey, you open the Robotaxi app. You can pay extra for the banner up top. Oh my God, Joe's Pet Shop is running a special on dog toys. If you order one now, you get 50% off. And then if you order 10, we'll give you 70% off, or what? Just come up with whatever business model. You say yes, and then the labor to get that dog toy to your house with an electric vehicle and a bot would be a fraction of what it would cost for a human driving a car. That is the network effect. Why would you give that network effect to Uber? You own the labor. Does it make sense? I mean, am I like over my skis here? Like, I'm trying to understand. Like,
I think that it's going to be a paradigm shift where, a bit like Blockbuster and Netflix. Like, during the Blockbuster days where you would do a half an hour round trip to go and get a DVD, you couldn't even comprehend the fact you were going to have an unlimited catalog of DVDs right there in front of you. Uber's business model is not set up for the fact there's going to be an unlimited abundance of cars which can pick you up at any moment for an order of magnitude less than the current price.
You got it.
It's not set up for that. I do think that McDonald's analogy was an interesting one, because it's like McDonald's has unlimited demand, yet they still need Uber. But then the realization I had was what I said was that Uber and McDonald's would deliver at the same price, but Uber would deliver a Tesla Robotaxi more expensive than Tesla would, because they need their car.
Exactly.
So there's no reason to use Uber.
Exactly.
And maybe to start with, there'll be a period of time where Tesla robotaxis aren't fully utilized because they don't have Uber's full demand and network effects, etc. But I think Elon will scorch the earth and say we'll have a slightly less productive robotaxi, which is still spitting out loads of cash flow, to slowly destroy Uber.
Not even slowly, rapidly destroy Uber.
Yeah.
Right? Like Uber's trying to defend a monopoly position. That's what they're trying to do. Like the reason why people choose Uber is not because it's like the greatest experience of all time. It's because it's the most convenient for the price that you pay. But when you have something that's going to be a lower cost per mile that is more convenient and more comfortable and more enjoyable and safer and private, it's mind-blowing. Like Uber is lucky to have Waymo on their network in Austin. That is a function of Waymo not having enough cars. That's not a function of Uber existing.
Waymo not being on Uber in San Francisco is a huge piece of signal. Huge.
Exactly. Exactly. You got it.